Hey there, folks! If you want to stay ahead of the weather and get the latest updates as soon as they happen, be sure to follow SkyAlert USA. We're here to keep you informed, so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos.
Breaking weather alert, multi-state winter storm and Arctic blast continue to grip North America, February 5th, 2026. Good evening and welcome to SkyAlert USA. I'm bringing you the latest developments on what meteorologists are calling one of the most persistent and widespread winter weather patterns to affect the United States and Canada in recent memory. As we close out this Thursday, February 5th, 2026, dangerous conditions continue across multiple regions, with new winter storm warnings just issued for 15 states and critical weather alerts extending from the Pacific Northwest to the Atlantic coast.
Current situation. Historic winter weather pattern persists. The United States and Canada are experiencing a relentless winter weather siege that shows no signs of immediate relief. According to the National Weather Service's Weather Prediction Center, a displaced polar vortex continues to dominate weather patterns across the eastern half of North America, creating what experts describe as a baroclinic zone, the perfect atmospheric breeding ground for powerful winter storms. The numbers tell a sobering story. Over 240 million people remain under various cold weather advisories, winter storm warnings, and extreme cold alerts. This represents one of the most extensive winter weather impacts in recent years, with effects stretching from northern Mexico through the Canadian border.
Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, additional snow and dangerous wind chills. Fresh winter storm warnings were announced today for 15 states across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions: Michigan, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and the Carolinas are all bracing for additional snowfall and punishing wind conditions. The National Weather Service predicts light to moderate snowfall amounts of up to 5 inches across these regions through the weekend. While these totals might seem modest, they're falling on top of existing snow cover from previous storms, compounding travel disruptions and creating hazardous conditions throughout the region. Combined with previous accumulations, many areas are dealing with snowpack that hasn't been seen in years. Wind conditions remain particularly dangerous. The Great Lakes region and Ohio Valley are experiencing wind gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour today, with these powerful winds creating significant blowing snow that reduces visibility to near zero in many locations. Looking ahead to Saturday, the Northeast and New England should prepare for even more intense conditions, with wind gusts potentially reaching 50 to 55 miles per hour. A deep upper-level trough and Arctic air mass have settled over the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast this weekend in the wake of a strong cold front that pushed through earlier this week. This trough is expected to slowly lift out of the region going into the beginning of next week, though temperatures will remain well below normal for days to come. Temperature readings across this region have been absolutely brutal. West Virginia recorded a bone-chilling minus 27 degrees Fahrenheit this morning, setting daily records and creating life-threatening conditions for anyone exposed to the elements. Wind chill values have plunged into the minus 20s and 30s across the plains, Midwest, and Northeast, with temperatures running 10 to 40 Fahrenheit degrees below seasonal averages. The National Weather Service is issuing stark warnings. Anytime you have cold weather advisories or extreme cold warnings, it is dangerous to be outside. Frostbite can occur within minutes. This is especially critical for areas still experiencing power outages from last week's devastating winter storm, where prolonged exposure to these temperatures without adequate heating poses serious health risks.
Devastating aftermath. January's historic winter storm. To understand the current situation, we must look back at the catastrophic winter storm that struck from January 23rd through January 27th, unofficially named Winter Storm Fern. This massive system carved a destructive path from northern Mexico through the southern and northeastern United States and into Canada, causing over 100 deaths and leaving a trail of destruction. The storm produced a massive swath of snowfall ranging from 1 to 2 feet from Texas to Maine, breaking daily snowfall records across the South. Cities along the Interstate 95 corridor, including Philadelphia and New York City, saw their heaviest snow accumulation since a nor'easter in February 2021. Toronto, Canada experienced its largest single-day snowfall since records began in 1937, receiving a staggering 46 centimeters, that's 18 inches, of snow. The death toll has been heartbreaking, with roughly half of the fatalities occurring in Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Many deaths have been attributed to hypothermia, while others are suspected to be related to carbon monoxide exposure from improper use of heating devices during widespread power outages. 4 deaths occurred in Louisiana alone due to carbon monoxide poisoning and oxygen concentrator failure during regional power outages. More than 1 million customers initially lost power nationwide, according to PowerOutage.com. As of today, tens of thousands of homes and businesses remain without electricity, particularly in Louisiana, where full power restoration wasn't achieved until just today, February 5th, due to high winds causing further repair delays. Mississippi officials called this storm their worst winter weather event since 1994. About 80 warming centers were opened across the state, and National Guard troops delivered supplies by truck and helicopter to isolated communities. The vast majority of school districts, universities, and municipal governments across Louisiana were closed, with many institutions in North Louisiana remaining closed through January 30th. Carolinas. Compounding disasters and unprecedented snowfall. The Carolinas face a particularly dire situation. Several days after Winter Storm Fern, another powerful winter storm struck on January 31st and February 1st, compounding recovery efforts and dumping additional snow on areas still reeling from the initial blast. For context, parts of North Carolina received over a foot of snow during the initial storm, with the system even producing snowfall records as far south as Florida. Now, sub-freezing weather continues through early February, with heavy snow persisting in the Carolinas, Virginia, and northeast Georgia. The National Weather Service reported snowfall totals for the January 31st to February 1st event that were remarkable for the region. Summerville, South Carolina recorded up to 2.7 inches, while areas around Hampton County saw up to 4 inches. For coastal South Carolina, this represents extraordinarily rare winter weather. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a city whose official seal features the sun, palm trees, and a seagull, expected 6 inches of snow during one of these recent events. The city has no snow removal equipment, and city officials stated they would use what we can find. Mayor Mark Cruia emphasized the unprecedented nature of these conditions for their coastal community. Social media has captured the surreal nature of this southern snowfall. One meteorologist posted images of the contrast between low-country snow and almost 300-year-old live oaks at Boone Hall, which have only been covered in snow a handful of times in their entire existence. Pure winter magic, he wrote, while acknowledging the serious impacts these storms are having on unprepared communities.
Current hazards: freezing rain and ice. Today, February 5th, brings a new hazard to the Carolinas. The Weather Prediction Center indicates that a deep shortwave trough is tracking across the northern Gulf and then off the Florida coast. This system is helping to strengthen secondary low pressure off the coast of the Carolinas, with lingering moisture extending back onshore. Forecast soundings indicate pronounced dry air above the surface, which is inhibiting significant precipitation. However, what precipitation does fall is occurring in a sub-freezing atmospheric column, leading to very light freezing rain or freezing drizzle across the eastern Carolinas this morning and into the afternoon. The Weather Prediction Center probabilities indicate a 10 to 30% chance, with locally 50% chance of more than 0.01 inches of ice accumulation from Cape Fear through the Outer Banks. While these may seem like small amounts, Even minimal ice accumulation creates treacherous driving conditions and can cause power line damage when combined with gusty winds.
The Midwest and Great Lakes regions, well, they're continuing to battle repeated clipper systems that keep bringing accumulating snow. These fast-moving disturbances, they're just classic signs of a real active jet stream pattern, and they're dropping bursts of heavy, dry snow all across the northern and central plains. Snow cover has now spread across the entire eastern area of the United States. Even the US Drought Monitor is noting that, honestly, it's pretty unusual to see such widespread snow cover reaching as far south as parts of the Deep South. This big snowpack, together with the stubborn cold, is piling up problems for infrastructure, agriculture, and just day-to-day life. Lake-effect snow bands have been especially persistent this year, and one really intense band, it just stalled right over much of Toronto for several hours during that January storm. That was enough to prompt Toronto to activate its major snow response plan for the second time in 2026. The Ontario Provincial Police, well, they responded to around 100 car crashes over a 24-hour period during the worst of the storm. Looking ahead, the pattern is still favourable for more clipper systems and lake-effect snow, at least through the middle of February. And temperatures across the Midwest, according to the Climate Prediction Centre, are forecast to stay below normal for February, with only a slow, gradual warm-up expected as we move into March.
After an extended period of dry weather and upper-level ridging, the Pacific Northwest is about to see a dramatic pattern change. According to the National Weather Service Weather Prediction Center's extended forecast discussion issued this morning, precipitation is set to make a return to Washington and Oregon starting Saturday. Rain is expected near the coast, with snow for the Cascades as a cold front from the Pacific approaches the region. This precipitation becomes more widespread going into Sunday, including more of the Northwest and the Northern Rockies, and will likely settle southward to include portions of central and northern California by early to middle portions of next week. The driving force behind this wet pattern is, an atmospheric river event, with higher rainfall totals becoming increasingly likely for the coastal ranges of extreme northwestern California and western Oregon. The Weather Prediction Center has introduced a marginal risk for the day for Sunday outlook for this region, which means there's a potential for flooding. Recent atmospheric river activity has already impacted the region. Between January 27th and February 1st, 4 atmospheric rivers affected the Pacific Northwest, producing 150 to 300 millimeters, that's 6 to 12 inches, of rain in the Olympic Mountains, and 100 to 200 millimeters in the North Cascades. The third event reached moderate strength, with integrated vapor transport near 500 kilograms per meter per second on January 30th, which classifies it as an AR2 on the Ralph Atmospheric River Scale. In Pacific County, Washington, a longer duration of continuous atmospheric river conditions exceeding 48 hours actually qualified locally as AR3. Despite these multiple atmospheric river events, snowpack across the Cascade Range remains below 50% of normal as of early February. This is a pretty critical concern because Cascade snowpack serves as a primary water reservoir for the Pacific Northwest, storing winter precipitation that's needed to sustain stream flow and reservoir levels through spring and summer. The recent atmospheric rivers brought mostly rain rather than snow to many elevation bands, and that's because of the warm air that came along with those systems. The snowpack usually reaches its annual peak in late March or early April, so that leaves roughly 6 to 8 weeks of potential accumulation remaining at the beginning of February. Seasonal outlooks indicate slightly increased odds of above normal precipitation in the Cascades during the February through April period, while temperatures don't show any strong deviation from climatological averages. Whether the upcoming atmospheric river events will help build snowpack or, further deplete it through rain on snow events, that's still a key concern for water managers. Energy release component values west of the Cascades climbed to daily record levels by mid-January and remained near or at record values through the end of the month because of the extended dry period. While the returning precipitation will help reduce fire danger, it also brings, flooding concerns.
So, Canada is experiencing what meteorologists are calling a tale of two seasons. We've got record-breaking warmth in some places, while dangerously cold Arctic air is gripping others. Down in southern Ontario, including Toronto, there was some heavy snowfall during that late January storm, but now temperatures are starting to moderate a bit. For Toronto, early February forecasts are showing highs right around 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's about -1 Celsius, with overnight lows dipping into the mid-20s, which is around -4 to -7 Celsius. But it's a whole different story for Northern Ontario First Nations communities. Those folks are facing much more severe conditions. On February 5th, a messy winter system slid through the far north, bringing periods of snow and even some pockets of freezing drizzle. Then gusty northwest winds and a sharp drop in temperatures. Multiple communities are seeing blowing snow at times, and those dangerous wind chills are making for life-threatening conditions out there. Right now, there are freezing drizzle advisories, snow warnings, and wind chill warnings in effect for communities like Cat Lake, Sandy Lake, Ogoki or Martin Falls, KI, which is Big Trout Lake, Casabonica, and Sachigo Lake. Wind chills in these remote areas are expected to reach some pretty extreme values, so there's a serious risk to anyone who has to go outside. Meanwhile, over in Western Canada, it's a totally different pattern. Saskatchewan saw mainly sunny skies and mild conditions today, with west-northwest winds picking up to about 25 to 45 kilometers per hour and highs around 8 degrees Celsius, which honestly is pretty pleasant for early February. Vancouver and coastal British Columbia are expecting wet conditions to return. Vancouver usually gets about 22 rainy days in February, with total rainfall around 242 millimeters.
early February forecasts suggest temperatures around 9 degrees Celsius, so pretty close to historical averages, with maybe just a light touch of snow up in the higher elevations. And then in Winnipeg, Manitoba, they're seeing moderate snowfall. They're expecting about 9 snowy days in the first 2 weeks of February. Temperatures are running a little above the historical average at minus 5.4 degrees Celsius, though, of course, that's still pretty cold by most standards.
Even the tropical paradise of Hawaii hasn't been spared from winter weather impacts. In early January, a really potent winter system brought heavy rainfall, strong winds, and even heavy snow to the islands, especially up on the summits of Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, over on the Big Island. A winter storm warning was issued for those summits above 11,000 feet, with snow piling up to 5 to 10 inches and ice making travel downright dangerous. Winds were gusting up to 80 miles per hour, which, believe it or not, is about the same as a Category 1 hurricane, causing a lot of blowing and drifting snow, and visibility dropped to near zero at times. The storm was fueled by what's called a Kona low system, and that brought widespread flooding, high surf, and some really powerful winds across the Hawaiian Islands. All the main islands were put under a flood watch, with forecasters warning about overflowing streams and drainages, which could lead to flooded roads and even potential landslides, especially in those areas with steep terrain. Coastal areas were dealing with high surf advisories, and east-facing shores saw surf heights of 8 to 12 feet. There was even a bit of minor coastal flooding during the early morning high tides. This powerful winter system is the kind of extreme weather that, while not unheard of up on Hawaii's high summits, really serves as a reminder that winter weather can impact even the most tropical of locations.
3-day forecast. What's ahead? So, looking ahead to Friday, February 6th, the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic will continue to see snow showers and, honestly, some dangerously cold wind chills. Additional light accumulations of, 1 to 3 inches are possible across interior sections. Wind gusts in the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley will reach, about 30 to 40 miles per hour, which will create areas of blowing snow and reduced visibility. Over in the Pacific Northwest, folks will start to see increasing clouds and the first showers approaching the coast as the atmospheric river system gets closer. Snow levels will initially be pretty high in the Cascades, around 6,000 to 7,000 feet. Temperatures are going to stay well below normal across the eastern two-thirds of the United States, with highs struggling to reach the teens and 20s Fahrenheit across much of the Midwest and Northeast. Wind chill values will remain in dangerous territory, especially across the northern plains and upper Midwest. Moving on to Saturday, February 7th, a significant escalation in weather impacts is expected. The Northeast and New England will face their most intense wind event of this weather pattern, with gusts potentially reaching 50 to 55 miles per hour. Combined with falling or blowing snow, these winds will create near whiteout conditions and make travel extremely dangerous. The atmospheric river makes landfall in the Pacific Northwest, bringing steady to heavy rain along the coast and heavy snow in the Cascades. Rainfall totals of 2 to 4 inches are expected in the mountains, with snow levels staying relatively high at first. The marginal risk for flooding goes into effect for extreme northwestern California and western Oregon. Southern states will see a brief reprieve with more tranquil conditions, though temperatures will still be below seasonal averages. The Central Plains may see another clipper system bringing light to moderate snow. And then, on Sunday, February 8th, the deep upper trough over the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast begins to slowly lift northward, but Arctic air remains entrenched. Snow showers will taper off across most areas, but dangerous wind chills will persist, particularly in the morning hours. The atmospheric river continues to impact the Pacific Northwest with widespread precipitation. The system expands to include more of the Northwest and Northern Rockies, with the potential for the moisture to begin affecting Northern California. River flooding becomes a significant concern, particularly for rivers that are already running high from previous atmospheric river events. A split upper flow pattern across the western half of the country brings a southern stream shortwave tracking toward the southern plains, which could develop into a more significant system early in the week ahead.
Long-range outlook. When will it end? The persistent question on everyone's mind is, when will this pattern break? According to AccuWeather's long-range meteorologists, waves of frigid air will continue to be released into much of the eastern United States through at least the middle of February. Paul Pastelok, AccuWeather's lead long-range meteorologist, explains, "We are monitoring a potential polar vortex disruption in early February that can give an extra boost to the cold in the eastern US, about 7 to 10 days later. Sudden warming high up in the atmosphere or stratosphere tends to set off a polar vortex displacement. That displacement may add more fury to a storm prior to the middle of the month and then more punch to the cold that follows that storm. The frequent Arctic outbreaks will result in monthly temperatures that are well below the historical average for February over much of the eastern half of the United States. Some areas may experience temperature departures of 4, 8, 10, or even more degrees below average, especially in the Midwest. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The Climate Prediction Center's outlook for mid-February shows above normal temperatures everywhere except the far west, including California and the westernmost areas of Nevada and Arizona. The center's longer-range forecast, covering 1 to 3 months out, predicts average weather for the majority of the United States. So, while the wait for warmer weather continues, relief appears to be on the horizon. Don't expect balmy and hot conditions yet, but the Arctic air is working its way out of the United States, at least for now.
Critical safety reminders. With such widespread and dangerous conditions, we just can't stress enough the importance of taking proper precautions. For those in areas experiencing extreme cold, limit your time outdoors. Frostbite can actually occur within minutes in extreme wind chills. Wear layers of loose-fitting, lightweight, warm clothing, rather than just one layer of heavy clothing. Make sure to cover all exposed skin, including your face. For those still without power, never use generators, grills, camp stoves, or other gasoline, propane, natural gas, or charcoal burning devices inside homes, basements, garages, or near windows. Carbon monoxide poisoning has already claimed lives in this event. Please check on your neighbors, especially elderly residents and those with special needs. For those facing snow and ice, avoid unnecessary travel. If you must drive, keep a winter emergency kit in your vehicle, including blankets, water, non-perishable food, flashlight, first aid kit, and a phone charger. Never drive around barricades. Road structures may have been damaged by flooding or other storm impacts. For Pacific Northwest residents, monitor river levels closely through the National Weather Service River Forecast Center. Be prepared for potential evacuations if you live in flood-prone areas, and never ever attempt to drive through flooded roadways. Turn around, don't drown.
Federal response. Under the leadership of President Donald Trump, the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA continue to support local and state-led responses to these winter weather events. 12 emergency declarations were approved, allowing states to request federal expertise and resources to help protect lives, property, public health, and safety. Mississippi received expedited federal funding on February 3rd to support its state-led recovery from the winter storm. FEMA has been working closely with affected states to provide commodities, technical assistance,